All right, so it's 12, and if we have some other folks who are going to join us, that's awesome. If not, we will go ahead and get started. So that way we'll have enough time for food and or some steps before the lunch hour is over. Glad to have you guys here. And as mentioned, our focus for today is actually going to be kind of some more details about the things that we talked about probably initially in our first coaching sessions. And today I wanted to talk just a little bit more in depth about kind of how to put together your eating plan, because of course, when it comes to weight loss, that's going to be the most important part of that. I like to include this quote here because if there is one thing that I have seen over the last decade or so that I have been here at Mercer and working with folks who are trying to lose weight, it's that there's a large number of people who either don't make any changes, or probably an equal amount of people who go back to a way that they had previously tried to lose weight, which didn't work for them. And then they get frustrated when it still doesn't work. So, really, when it comes to any kind of change that you want to make, the important thing is that you have to do something differently. My recommendation is to not revisit things that you have done in the past that did not work. A lot of people say, well, I used to do Weight Watchers. And it's like, okay, well, did it work for you? Well, if it did, but you couldn't stick with it, my argument would be perhaps that's not the long term strategy. So, hopefully, what we're doing over the next 10 weeks is building some kind of foundation that you're going to be able to stick with over the long term. And just kind of reiterate what we talked about in our coaching meetings, that what we want here is a long-term solution. We're taking the emphasis off of the competition for weight loss per person as like a winner for how much you lose compared to the group, because we really want the measure to be how you do in terms of sticking with the goals and how you can hopefully keep those going throughout the next several months, perhaps next year, a long-term strategy here. So, the most important thing when it comes to fat loss is to create a calorie deficit. So, there is a website that I really enjoy. It's called aworkoutroutine.com. This is where I get a lot of my little graphics from. He has a ton of great, thoroughly researched articles available for free on his website. If you're ever interested in learning more and seeing specifically more about the science of weight loss, I would strongly recommend taking a look at his website. Lots of good information there. But fundamentally, the key to weight loss is that we need to create a calorie deficit. So, that being said, what we want to do is create a reasonable calorie deficit that you can continue on with. As we talked about in our coaching meeting, going to a 1,200 calorie per day diet or slashing and burning calories may help you lose weight in the short term, but it's going to be really hard to stick with that over the long term. So, what we want to do is create a modest calorie deficit and then try to build on that over time, hopefully helping you not feel super hungry, having energy, not getting into this kind of binging and purging type thing where you're restricting and then overeating. So that's where our fundamental focus is going to be. All diets that work are working because they create a calorie deficit. So keto works because you're creating a calorie deficit. Low fat works because you're creating a calorie deficit. We believe here in wellness that the best thing to do is, rather than follow a highly restrictive diet where you're cutting out a whole bunch of things or eliminating one or more food groups, is to use a healthy approach where you're doing things kind of moderately. Before we kind of get to the diet components a little bit more in depth, I just wanted to make a note about exercise. The bottom line is that research has shown consistently that exercise only has a very modest impact on fat loss. And so while we often talk about exercise in combination with diet to promote weight loss, the big bang for your buck is going to be focusing on the food component. What I really recommend is that rather than focusing on exercise as a way to burn calories or some way to offset eating, is that you start to think about exercise as an investment in your health. Exercise benefits our health in almost every single way that is possible, from mental health and depression and anxiety to lowering cholesterol, reducing the risk of stroke, all kinds of things. So I like to think about my exercise as an investment in feeling good and in hopefully 30 years still being able to do the activities that I want to. Exercise is incredibly inefficient at burning calories or creating a deficit. And so if we look at the average for 1 minute of moderate to vigorous intensity exercise, so this is like a brisk walk or faster, you're only going to burn between 5 and 10 calories per minute. So if, for example, you run a 10-minute mile and you go out and run 5 miles, then you're only going to burn about 500 calories. So that seems great, except for the fact that it probably, it took you almost an hour, and you could have shaved off those same 500 calories by not drinking a Starbucks Frappuccino. Actually, you'd save more than 500 calories. So you have to do a lot of exercise to get a pretty modest reduction in your total calories. So again, it's good to use both exercise and diet, but relying on exercise as a way to burn more calories is not very efficient. The other thing is that if you use a tracking device or some kind of app like MyFitnessPal and it gives you back your exercise calories, don't eat them back. The numbers that we use to come up with your estimated calories include your activity level. So if you remember the scale from 10 to 12, for moderately active people, that includes your activity level. So some people run into trouble because MyFitnessPal, if you sync your activity, it says, oh wow, you burned 250 calories doing a group fitness class. And so people end up eating back those calories. Don't do that. Use the calculation that I suggested, and that incorporates activity. And that way you don't have to worry about it, because the estimates of how much we burn are highly inaccurate, even if you're using something like an activity tracker. So just exercise for your health. Don't worry about the offset for calories. Do keep in mind that the more exercise you get, the hungrier you are going to be. Your body wants to maintain your current weight. And if you increase your exercise, your body is saying, hey, we have higher calorie needs. And so your appetite will increase. Be mindful of that. Also keep in mind that strength training is really important. Sometimes people think about strength training after I've lost the weight. That's the wrong time to start thinking about it. Strength training now as part of your overall strategy for healthy choices and healthy behaviors is critical to get into that pattern. And again, when we build muscle, that means that we have more calories to burn through our metabolism, even at rest. So if you're not currently doing strength training, my encouragement to you is to start thinking about that over the next few weeks. And again, I'm happy to help put a plan together. So with that out of the way, again, reverting back to our chart here on calorie deficit, the most important thing is to create a calorie deficit. Your metabolism is not broken. It's probably not because of sleep. It's probably not because of many other things, unless you have an underlying health condition. If you're not losing fat, chances are that you're not in a calorie deficit. So how do we do that? First and foremost, you need to use the the number that we recommended in coaching, and then use that to help guide your choices and pay particular attention to the protein, fat, and carbs. All calories are not created equal. And again, from a modest calorie restriction for overall health, we really do want to focus on the overall quality of our foods. So being sure that we have adequate protein, which is critical, especially as we get older, and for weight loss. And then some kind of a balance of both carbs and fat. The only way to have a general idea about what you're eating is to track all of your food accurately. That means alcohol, that means salad dressing, that means the butter that you put into whatever you're cooking. So being really mindful about all of those little things that add up, because over the course of a day, the little things can certainly add up to several hundred calories. And if you're not losing weight, it can be an easy way for you to miss some of the things that are cropping up throughout the course of the day. If you, for example, don't log, little things like olive oil or butter or a glass of wine, that right there is probably close to 400 calories a day, which, if we're trying to create a deficit around 500 calories a day, is 4/5 of that. So just be mindful about everything that goes into it. The other thing is that if you're not measuring, you could be missing a good number of your calories. We have a big problem with portion distortion, especially if you eat out a lot, because what we think is a serving is actually much larger than what the serving size is. So if you are not a good judge of what a serving, excuse me, of a food is, get out your measuring cup or invest $20 and get a food scale. After you do this for a couple of weeks, you're going to get much better at eyeballing things. You don't have to do it forever, but if you haven't taken the time to make sure that you know what a serving is, take this time to actually measure it out so that you know what it looks like. Don't forget to log the incidentals. If there's a thing of cookies out in your office and you just happen to grab one, is that a huge deal? Not really. Maybe it's 50 or 100 calories. But if you're doing that throughout the course of a day or a week, then that's going to add up again over several days. It could be several hundred calories. Same thing if you're making food for your family, for your kids, you're grabbing a bite here, you're eating a tater tot, you're eating a chicken finger. Again, when we're in the business of trying to reduce calories, several hundred calories adds up fairly quickly. You can see here on the little graph that if you don't measure and account for your food, if you have a goal, in this case of 2,000 calories, but on no day did this person actually hit 2,000 calories. Some days they were at 2,200, some days they were at 28, 27, that over the course of the week, they're actually in calorie surplus. So even if you have a goal of 2,000, if you're not hitting it, then that goal doesn't really make too much sense. Do keep in mind, we're never going to know 100% exactly what we ate, but we do want to get as accurate of an estimate as we can. And that way, once we have accurate estimates, we can make changes over time. Couple things I've seen with folks' diet journals is that people, especially on the weekends, are going over what their estimated calorie goal is. That happens, and you shouldn't beat yourself up, because over the course of the week, we would like it to stay around what your goal is. So if you're over by a couple hundred one day and under by a couple hundred the next day, over the course of the week, that's going to average out. But if on the weekends you're going over by 500, Friday, Saturday, and Sunday, that's a really hard way to catch back up, or it's probably offsetting what you've already done earlier in the week. So the way that I think about my daily calorie goal is that that is my budget. So just like if I had a checking account, I have to pay my bills first. And if I run out of money, then I can't buy whatever it is that I want to. So if you're logging your food throughout the course of the day and you get down to the end of the day and you're out of calories, that's it. That's all you've got. You can't buy something else if you don't have any more money. You can, you live on credit, and then we know what happens to all of our finances. So the best way, in my personal experience, to plan for the things that you want to buy with your calories is to go ahead and put them in as soon as you know that you want them. So for example, if you know that you're going to a tailgate on Saturday and you're going to have a couple of beers, or you're going to have some chips and dips, go ahead on Saturday morning and log those things in, so that throughout the course of the day, you've already budgeted for them, so you can cut back accordingly. If you're out of money, you're out of money, and that's it. Again, if you're out of money and you want a beer and it's the end of the day and you have no more money, then you don't get to buy a beer. So again, plan in advance as much as you can, and then you can budget for it without busting your budget at the end of the day. You do have to be a little bit obsessed about this, at least for a little while. I'm not saying that you have to plan every meal, log every food, shop, and so everything is on hand at all times for the rest of your life. But as you're trying to establish new habits, it does help if you make this a priority. As somebody who has been logging consistently for 12 years, I will say that I enjoy it, and I personally still use it even after all of these years. That may not be you, but I will say that for this period of time, it does need to be kind of at the top of your priority list, because you're not going to fall backwards into hitting your goals. You're not going to fall backwards into healthy food choices. You're not going to fall backwards into making time for exercise. So plan it out, and you have to be just a little bit obsessed with it for this period of time. So why is it, let me go back. One of my favorite things. So I mentioned that I am somebody who has been logging consistently for many years. And let me show you why it's important for us to be making sure that we're logging everything. Let me go back to share screen, and here. So this is, I use a different tracking app called Avatar, but you can see here, it's a little bit hard to see, but where the arrow is, this was a few months ago, but my daily calorie goal was 2,222. That's a good even number. Well, what I actually hit on this particular day, we had a cookout, we had some friends over, a friend brought a cheesecake, is that I actually hit 3,596 calories. And that really wasn't a lot of effort. Like, that wasn't even me purposely being like, wow, I'm going to eat everything that I want to. And so it adds up really quick. And this was a day where I kind of said, all right, I'm going to log everything that I did, but I'm not going to necessarily worry about hitting my budget. But as you can see, a huge surplus like that in just one afternoon can do serious damage if you're trying to create a deficit throughout the course of the rest of the week. So my strong suggestion to you also is, even on days where you're being bad, log it as best as you can, because for me, this was when I first started using Avatar a few months ago, and I had committed, because I had a bad habit when I was doing my MyFitnessPal of saying, okay, I'm just not going to log because I know it's really bad. So I made a commitment that I was going to log every single thing that I ate and drank, regardless of whether it was good or if it was going to hit my numbers or whatever. And doing that really helped me to rein in some of these weekends that I had where I was like, I've been so good all week. Because again, if you're going over by 1,500, 2,000 calories in a day, you've pretty much erased whatever it is you had done throughout the course of the earlier week. So don't do that. The next one is, we talked about pretty extensively, I hope, in most of the coaching sessions. Be sure that you make a menu. Your life is going to be a lot easier if you are, gosh, why do I keep doing that? It's going to be a lot easier if you have a plan before you are actually out there shopping. So have a general idea about what you're going to cook, have a general idea about what's for lunch and breakfast, and then especially as you're getting started, keep it simple. You don't have to have a new meal for every single day, especially things like breakfast and lunches. If you can have 2 or 3 options for breakfast, that's going to make it a lot easier in terms of planning and shopping and getting things together. And then for lunches, if you can utilize leftovers from dinner, or if you have a bunch of staples that you can kind of repurpose throughout the week for lunch, again, it's going to be a lot simpler, a lot easier to make 5 different meals in a week as opposed to making 28 different meals in a week. Again, if you love cooking and you love having different foods every day of the week, then that's totally fine. But if you don't have the time and the mental bandwidth to do that, try to pare it down as much as possible. My big thing is to work smarter. So when we cook our proteins or carbs, we do a bunch at once, so we have to cook less often. I heard somebody say one time it's just as easy to cook 4 chicken breasts as it is to cook one. So again, if you have a plan for a dinner and you're going to have hamburgers on the grill or chicken on the grill, don't just do enough for that meal for you and your family. Cook twice as much, and now you have meals made for the rest of the week, and you don't have to cook again. So proteins, carbs, things like that you can cook ahead and then just divvy up, gonna make your life a lot easier throughout the course of the week. Get the tools that you need. Crock pots are a lifesaver. I bought a rice steamer, which has also been a lifesaver. If you're somebody who likes Instapots or haven't tried one of those, may be worth it for you, especially if you feel hurried at the end of the day trying to cook dinner. The convenience factor for these things is going to be huge. The more convenient you can make healthy eating, the more likely you are to stick with it. Keep in mind that frozen options are hugely price effective, convenient, and they don't go bad. I have a bad habit of buying a bunch of produce and then come, the end of the week, half of it is still sitting there. So I've really moved toward almost all of my produce being frozen. Super convenient because I can throw it in the microwave, and it usually has at least 2 or 3 servings per container, and I don't have to worry about things going bad. Better for the environment, better for my pocketbook. Keep in mind that you may want to pay for things that are convenient. So if you don't want to go through the time of chopping up vegetables or measuring out servings of nuts or whatever, then buying the conveniently sized options are going to be a good option. They are going to be more expensive, but depending on how you feel about your time, it may be worth it to buy the single serving things that you don't have to actually put the work in to prepare. All right, so let's talk about how to build our meal. As we talked about in the handout that I first sent last week on the flow chart of healthy eating, figure out your daily calorie needs. I'm pretty sure all of you have already done that. And then again, divvy up where your carbs, fat, and protein need to come from. And then divide that protein daily goal by how many times per day you want to eat. As a general rule, each of your meals should have some kind of source of protein between 20 and 30 grams, a veggie, a healthy carb, and then depending on how much fat you need, you can either add another source of fat like avocado or nuts or guacamole or whatever, or you can just choose a little bit higher fat protein such as salmon or chicken breast or ground beef. Or if you have less fat, then you can, of course, choose leaner options for either your protein or your carbs and stuff like that. So here is an example of what would be kind of a sample day for me. This is kind of pared down. I eat a good amount of calories. And so this is kind of like the basics, and then I add stuff on. But breakfast for me almost every single day is going to be some kind of oatmeal with fruit. So I add protein to my oatmeal by using half a cup of egg whites, which is about 15 grams of additional protein. And so I do that. I do my old-fashioned oatmeal. You can certainly do any kind that you want. Add a half a cup of egg whites to it from the container. Add a little extra water, throw it in the microwave. I do frozen fruit, again, because I don't want stuff to go bad. But if I put my cup or half a cup of blueberries or raspberries or whatever in there, then it warms up in the microwave and it's totally fine. Lunch, my protein is going to be whatever was left over or that we grilled from the weekend. A lot of times we do chicken. A lot of times we'll do lean ground beef in terms of either burgers or throw it on the stovetop, but it can be whatever you want or you have left over. Some kind of carb, so brown rice, potato, quinoa, whole grain bread, whatever you prefer. And then where's my veggie coming from? As usual, I'm going to do the frozen stuff. Snack, I'm going to have protein in the form of hard-boiled eggs. I'm going to have another veggie, and then add some guacamole so that it tastes delicious. Depending on what your calorie needs, you could add another piece of fruit. You could add whole grain bagel with some peanut butter. Whatever it is that fits your numbers and are things that you enjoy. Dinner, again, where's my protein coming from? Where's my carb coming from? Where's my vegetables? Every single day, hit your protein or get close. As we talked about in our meetings, we're probably working towards hitting our protein as opposed to just getting there in the first week. Every day has at least 3 servings of vegetables. For women, we need at least 25 grams of fiber each day. You can certainly go up a little bit more. My goal is 30 grams. For men, we need a little bit more. The recommendation is 38 grams. If you're paying attention to your fiber, which you can on your MyFitnessPal app, it'll tell you your grams of fiber, then it's really hard to not eat whole grains, fruits, and vegetables. If you're eating mostly processed stuff, you're not going to hit your fiber. And then again, stay within your calorie budget. For me, if I do everything right, then I get to have Snickers ice cream bars for dessert, or I get to have Jiffy cornbread muffins, or I get to have frozen waffles. So as long as I hit my bills through the course of the day, if I have calories left over, I eat or drink whatever the heck I want to within my budget. Sometimes that's a couple glasses of wine, sometimes that's ice cream, sometimes I budget and I have a whole pizza. Well, the frozen pizzas, not like a full large pizza from Papa John's. But again, if you know that you want something, budget for it and totally make room for it. Just a little outline here of shopping list versus how to prepare. Again, I strongly recommend that everybody figures out what foods you enjoy and will eat. If you're not a fish person, then don't say that you're going to eat salmon. If you do like fish, but you don't want the inconvenience of cooking it, the packets of tuna fish, the packets of salmon, these are delicious now because they have a variety of flavors. Super cheap, super convenient. You can keep them in your purse or in your desk, and then you have a source of protein for whenever you want to. Other than that, figure out what you're going to eat from your shopping list. It shouldn't be expensive. If you're a smart shopper, this stuff should not break the bank. A lot of times we think that convenience and junky foods are cheaper, but that is often not the case. It's just this narrative that we've come up with. 5 pounds of chicken thighs at Sam's is less than $15. A box of brown rice is $1.87. Frozen vegetables are 10 for $10 at Kroger. And so if you're a smart shopper, you can totally eat healthy and on budget for a very reasonable price. The big thing is to kind of prepare in advance, so cook a bunch of protein that you want for the week. Also, it makes a lot of sense to do big portions of chili or beef stew, or a big thing of vegetable lasagna with lean beef in there. So if you make things in larger batches, then you can use those for leftovers throughout the course of the week. Again, just a reminder, is easy to bake 4 chicken breasts as it is 1. So if you're doing something for the family, just make a little bit extra so you have leftovers. Breakfast, again, keep it simple. If you don't like to eat first thing, if you don't want to cook something, find things that are convenient that you can grab and go. You can make, like an egg casserole in advance and then divvy it up into, 6 servings. So you have 1 for each day. Pair that with a fruit. Protein shakes or smoothies are a great option for something that you can take with you in the car, so you don't necessarily have to cook anything. Again, convenience food like frozen waffles, oatmeal in a container, like the little cups, all these things are fine. You'll probably just need to add some protein to it, because almost all of those are going to be lower in protein and not sufficient to hit your meal goal. So again, think about the things that you want, get them on hand, prepare as many as you can up front. And I think meal prep has kind of like a bad rap in terms of, oh, it takes all day Sunday, all that stuff. It literally doesn't. I mean, if you throw something on the grill, throw it in the oven, throw it in the crock pot, your active time of cooking is maybe 30 minutes, depending on what you're doing. And sure, it's cooking for an hour or so, but it's passive. It's in the oven, it's on the grill, it's in the crock pot. So this shouldn't be an activity that needs to take up a significant part of your weekend. Just a reminder here with some of the suggested foods broken down by protein, veggies, fruit, carbs, fat. Again, this list should be personalized to you. I was talking to several people who were really struggling about not really sure about where to get protein from, and that's just going to be a personalized thing. If you're somebody who doesn't like a lot of meat, then you're going to have to find meatless options that you can have. Tofu, beans, dairy products, eggs. A lot of the frozen meatless options are available and are good choices. You're going to pay more for them, and also be mindful because they tend to be higher in calories because they have to make them taste like something. But it's going to be on you to figure out what are the things that you can actually eat and enjoy, and will go towards hitting your numbers. So that's it. I wanted it to be 30 minutes or less, and I think I did that. Does anybody have any questions about anything for today or in general? And of course, feel free to email me. As I hope I mentioned to all of you who are doing MyFitnessPal or some other app like that, I'm happy to look at diet journals. Shoot me an email and let me know that you're ready for me to look at it. I'm not going to go in and spy on people's diet journals. So unless you shoot me an email or tell me, hey, will you look at this? I'm not going to be looking at your diet journal. So tell me if you want some feedback. Don't assume that I'm looking at it. Anybody have anything before we break? Plenty of time to go in a couple thousand steps. All right, well, if you think of anything that you need help with or more information or suggestions, let me know, and I'll be talking to all of you guys real soon. If I don't see you beforehand, I will see you guys on Friday. Have a good one.